Mr. G here with another weather forecast. Get you ready for the upcoming work week. We just got finished dealing with that ginormous nor'easter that dumped over 30 inches of snow over parts of Massachusetts and Rhode Island especially. We're hard hit by this big monster, but it is long gone and in the North Atlantic right now. It kind of moved through a little bit quicker than I thought it would. It cleared the area last night, so they are now getting to clean up. Going to enjoy a period of nice weather before their next chance of precipitation arrives Thursday and Friday, where they could see regular rain this time and much warmer temperatures. They will recover quickly in the temperature department and warm back into the 40s and 50s by the end of the week. So there's going to be a gradual warm up and return to normal for the first folks in the Northeast, so they can clean up from that big nor'easter that really created quite a mess up there. But we are going to jump into things. But first, we got to do a little housekeeping first. So 80% of the people who watch this channel are not subscribed. So what I would like for you to do is subscribe to the channel and also like the video. So we're going to pause a moment to give you a chance to do that. Alright, there you go. Thank you very much for liking the video and subscribing to the channel. So we're going to move right along now and talk about weather, which is the thing I love, the wonderful world of weather. We're going to get into this week's upcoming forecasts and take a look at what's going to be ahead for America in this coming week. We're going to get into our interactive map here, take a big look of the nation. As you can see, all of those watches and warnings on the northeast areas that we saw over the weekend on your Friday and Saturday are now long gone. Things are much quieter now, with the exception of some small craft advisories offshore because of the water is still kind of choppy because of the swells from that storm that is still out here in the North Atlantic as it's making its way towards the Northern Europe. It's going to give them problems. So all the folks on the oil rigs in the North Atlantic around Norway and Sweden and stuff, whew, they are going to deal with it when that bad boy get up that way. Look out now. That's usually what happens to these nor'easters. They end up in the North Atlantic tearing up things in the shipping interests up that way. But we're going to take a look at what's going on stateside now. And there's not much going on across the country. As you see, things have quieted down in the Northeast. And here in the upper Midwest, we got some special weather statements in this area, as well as a hydrologic outlook here in parts of southern Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, and in Kentucky. And that is because a lot of the snow that has fallen here has begun to melt, and there's some problems with ice jams and things like that in the rivers. A lot of ice dams and melting snow is overflowing some of those rivers down there, so we can see some river flooding in these areas here as some of that snow melt because they've warmed pretty significantly in these areas. It's warmed into the mid 40s. There are some 50s in the forecast here. It's going to get quite warm later in the week. They're going to hit the 60s in this area, so a lot of that snow that is falling here is going to melt. And then here in the same thing here in Georgia, as we've had some ice and things like that. And there's kind of a problem with the freeze-thaw cycle. It's been warming during the day and getting cold below freezing at night. So the wet roads are refreezing because much of the roadways there are untreated. They don't really do the whole salt thing like we do here in the upper Midwest. Let me adjust my camera real quick so that you're not seeing so much space above my head. Let's do it a little bit more. Excuse me about that. That's my big hands getting all in the screen. But here in South Florida, we do have to watch for a freeze warning for the orange crop down there. The oranges don't like the cold. So the next day or two is going to have those freeze warnings at night. It's going to warm up decently during the day enough, but they can handle the 50s for highs. But it's those overnight lows in the low 30s and upper 20s that's not good for the crop, as well as the iguanas. The iguanas can't handle it either. They don't like the temperature when it goes below 40. They kind of go into a comatose state and they'll fall out of the trees. So you'll be walking by. Don't be shocked if you get smacked upside the head by a 6-pound iguana. They do hurt when they fall. So please be mindful of that. Just leave them alone. They'll be fine when the weather warms back up. So we're going to take a look here in South Texas. This is our other area of interest. As you can see, this green outline here, this is a product that the National Weather Service put out because there's a convective outlook for this area. So there is the potential for thunderstorms down here. This is the only area in the country right now that could see any thunderstorms. So there is the possibility of some afternoon and evening thunderstorms in the areas here in Southwest Texas, El Paso, Texas, San Antonio, and maybe Austin, Texas might get in some of those thunderstorms. And there is also the potential of some freezing temperatures overnight. As you can see, they're going to warm into the 70s in the Dallas area. So in many parts of Texas is going to warm quite nicely. A nice warming trend for the folks in the southeast is going to take place. And then we have issues with freezing and thawing. And then we have a fire weather watch here in parts of Nebraska. It's been very, very dry out west. So we're going to take a look at the drought watch, the drought monitor situation, the drought outlook later on in this video. So be prepared, be ready for that. We're going to talk about the drought situation and what that looks like and what could be changes that can occur, how that's going to progress. We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about those good old wind chill and high winds, typical high winds for the upper Midwest here, the high plains here of Montana and the Dakotas can see some high winds from time to time because that is just typical for this time of the year and typical weather for those areas, those high plains off the mountains, off the backside, the leeward side of the mountains. That air coming down the mountains can pick up speed as it goes across the high plains because there is kind of a downward slope, a gentle slope. It goes from higher terrain to lower terrain as you progress toward the Mississippi River. Everything flows down toward the Mississippi River. The air current flows down toward where the Mississippi Valley is. The Mississippi Valley is these regions here. The borders of these states, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, and Minnesota. This is the path of the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River borders all of these states. So this is kind of like you have the continental divide in the mountains here. This is the highest point in the nation. Well, the lowest point in the nation is here at the Mississippi River. So everything flows toward the Mississippi River, including air currents, like the flow towards the Mississippi River Valley. It flows down, so those winds that come across the plains toward the Mississippi typically can be very high, much higher than it is typically coming from east to west, because west to east is a much larger area. The terrain is much higher, so that gentle slope, that progressive downward slope in the topography is why you often see those high winds across the plain states, especially over here on the Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, North and South Dakota, as well as eastern Wyoming, Colorado, and Montana. Because in these states, the western half is all mountains. It's the Colorado Rocky. You have the northern Rockies here, and you have the different mountain ranges and like the Wasatch Range here. And so you have to watch for that. So it influences the weather and it influences the air current. So, but significant weather right now, it's actually pretty quiet across the nation. Not much is going on there. So, And again, in Southern California, you often have the Santa Ana winds as that air around the high pressure come around and come down through the canyons and passes. You get that dry northeast winds that contribute to a lot of forest fires and brush fires in Southern California. So you also have to watch for that. There are a few fires burning right now. There's several fires burning across Texas right now and Oklahoma, as well as there is a few fires in the Carolinas right now. There are a few brush fires going and some smaller fires. So that is it in a nutshell across the nation and what we are having to deal with right now. So let's take a look as we jump into our first deterministic model, which is going to be our GFS model, which is the global forecast solution. We are going to jump into that right now and see what that has in store and what it predicts for this upcoming week. Now, as you can see, you can no longer see that nor'easter here in the northeast, which was a big part of this map for the last few days. Now that that's gone and is out of our life forever, hopefully, we're going to enjoy a nice period of tranquil weather here in the northeast, in the upper Great Lakes, in the Great Lakes, just say the upper Great Lakes. So it's just the Great Lakes and the upper Midwest. We are going to enjoy a period of fairly quiet weather. Plus, there's going to be a somewhat significant warm up in the south and across the southwest, where it's been warmer than average by nature this winter because of La Nina. The effects of the La Nina is responsible partly for that high ridge that's been across the west that was responsible for helping to trigger that nor'easter that blew through the northeast and New England states. So let's take a look ahead. Let's move our map and see what's coming in the future. Nothing now but a stream of Alberta clippers is going to stream across the upper Midwest. We're going to have our typical Alberta clipper stream across. As you can see, that first little area of moisture is going to come by here on the 31st, which is tomorrow. And there's an Alberta clipper that's going to skirt the U.S. and Canada border, might bring a little bit of light snow to North Dakota and far northern Minnesota for your second, and then that is going to contribute to the development of our next mid-latitude storm here that's going to hit the Great Lakes and the mid-Atlantic states. We're going to see some rain and freezing rain over here for your fourth. Going to see that move across. Not going to drop too much. It's going to be significant, but nothing like that nor'easter. We may get a few inches of snow in the northeast again, as well as some thunderstorms across the southeast and a few severe thunderstorms. But it won't be too bad. And then we have just another parade of Alberta clippers coming down from Canada, coming down off the back of this ridge to the trough. It's going to slide on through. There's our next Alberta clipper. You see it passing by in southern Canada. That's going to come by about the 8th. Here comes the next Alberta clipper that's going to come down off of the mountains and slide across Nebraska. A little bit of heavy snow. It's going to be kind of a potent little Alberta clipper. Then you're going to see it wash out here in the northern plains. And then another Alberta clipper is going to pass on the 11th. As you can see, the parade of Alberta clippers and maybe some more storms developing along the southeast. They're going to develop right offshore and move offshore. So they're not going to affect the northeast this time. We're going to see this stream of southern stream systems develop and move offshore off the southeast coast. So that is what the GFS is showing for right now. Let's take a look at the European model. And the European model is running it. And let's get the European running for us. All right, come on, there we go. As you can see, here comes a weather system into the Pacific Northwest. It's finally going to bring some rain to the coast and snow up in the mountains. They've been kind of a drought too lately. Things have been pretty dry. That high ridge has been deflecting storms away from them as well too, because it's been driving them into northwest Canada. Hair in my mouth. Anyway, so there again is that mid-latitude system. It's not really a classic low pressure center. It's more like an open wave, a trough of low pressure. That's why you don't see a low anywhere here. It's just a trough of low pressure, a big frontal boundary, really. The low pressure center is way up in Canada, but it has a trailing cold front, which is going to move through the southeast. And this is going to be from the 2nd to the 4th. So you're going to deal with that moving through the Great Lakes, the mid-Mississippi Valley, and the Ohio Valley, and then on and off into the northeast. You'll see that pass off around between the 2nd and the 4th. And then that's going to be pretty much it. There's going to be a pretty tranquil period coming up, with the exception of that mid-latitude storm between the 2nd and the 4th that's going to affect mainly the Ohio Valley, the mid-Mississippi Valley, and the steel country of the Great Lakes area, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, upstate New York, maybe the higher terrain of Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. It's going to spread some snow, maybe a few inches of snow, rain along the coast for Boston. That's going to be the rain that they're going to see toward the end of the week. They're going to warm up again, but then see that rain about the end of the week, okay? And there will be an area of freezing rain that's going to affect central Ohio and central Indiana. Maybe parts of Illinois and Missouri could see a bit of freezing rain too on the 3rd and 4th. So that is probably, to me, in my opinion, is the biggest hazard, is freezing rain, because it's that rain that falls. It's rain, but you have frozen surfaces, so it freezes among contact with the surface, with the ground. So the roadways, it really can be an issue. It can also be an issue with power lines and trees, causing, if it accumulates a lot, the heavy ice stuck to the trees or the power lines can cause them to snap and cause power outages. So that is what the European is showing for us now. Let's move along to our GEFS. The GEFS is our global ensemble forecast model, and it is going to tell us what is going on as far as our steering currents are concerned. And this is, you see that ridge that been out west with the trough in the east. A weather system forms out here and dissipates as it moves offshore. Now that trough, you see a trough build out west with a ridge in the east. This is going to be for you on your 2nd of February. As you can see, this is going to be that be responsible for that area of low pressure, that mid-latitude, middle of the country storm that's going to occur on your 2nd through the 4th, through the 5th. It's gonna show up in our sights on the 2nd, finally move off the East Coast on about the 5th, when that'll be completely out of the picture. And this is what the mid-altitude steering currents are. That's gonna, you see that ridge really takes shape on the east, trough in the west, more along the central states. Then you have a western trough. This is what's called an omega. When you have a trough on the east, trough in the west, a ridge in the east and a ridge in the west with a trough in the central. But they're usually smaller scale, so that's going to progress out really quickly. As you can see, as we get into the 8th, that ridge builds back in on the west, but it's a little bit more shallow. Not as deep of a trough out east. As you can see, that trough tries to build back in, dig back in the east. About the 11th, that trough returns, amplifies a little bit. That ridge out west tries to amplify, but it's more of an elongated zonal pattern. As you see that zonal pattern take effect as you get to about the mid-February. So I don't see any more major storms in our future over the next 2 weeks. I don't see anything too drastic developing, at least according to the model guidance as of right now. We'll have that trough flatten out, and that ridge flatten out, and we get into a long wave pattern. So that is what the GEFS showing. Now let's take a look at what the drought conditions are across the nation. Drought conditions you see are much less out east, because out east has been getting the brunt of the precipitation, especially along the southeast has been getting a whole lot of rain. As you see, some light drought conditions, abnormally dry conditions exist in the Carolinas, but I expect on the next update of this forecast that's going to probably be alleviated or go away, as they've had a lot of precipitation up in the last month. I think they update this every month, and as of right now, it's been a very wet through this part of the nation, and Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama. You should see these conditions improve, at least for these areas here. Texas and Oklahoma, you should probably see these conditions worsen because it's been exceptionally dry. The panhandle of Oklahoma and northwest New Mexico, as well as in north central Montana, exceptionally dry. And then we've had exceptional drought here in central Oregon, and parts also in south central Nevada has been exceptionally dry. And of course, it's always typically naturally dry in these areas. And it's not too bad if you say it's abnormally dry in the mountain, in the desert southwest. That's not too bad, actually, considering it's actually been more drier in the Great Plains than it has in the desert southwest. It's kind of interesting to me because, well, the southwest is drier, so it's typically going to be dry. If it's drier than it typically is, that's exceptional. That's a good reason why that you see it as it's exceptionally dry or extreme drought in these regions here, because it typically gets more precipitation, because these areas benefit typically from more moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, but they haven't been getting that in the western side of the Great Plains. It's been better here across the Midwest than it has the Great Plains. So it's just normally dry here in Minnesota, as well as Iowa and the Dakotas. We are in this position of abnormally dry. We've benefited from the Alberta Clippers. We wouldn't have any snow right now if it wasn't for the Alberta Clippers. We've had a steady stream of Alberta Clippers here skirt across the northern plains and the Great Lakes. Over the last month, we've had 3 or 4 of them a week, so we get a little shot of snow about every day and a half or so. We get another inch or 2 of snow, of that light fluffy snow. We've been getting that, so that's been providing precipitation for us. But got to remember, these Alberta Clippers are very cold and they're moisture starved. So what little moisture they do manage to squeeze out is when it melts, it's not going to really mean much in the way of liquid. So it's not don't have that much liquid. So this is what the National Weather Service says that we're going to have for temperatures. These are our highs today. As you can see, those 20s across the Great Lakes in the upper Midwest. And we warm all the way to the 60s and 70s across Texas, Florida, as well as in the Southwest. See that 72 in Phoenix. So I think Phoenix right now is the nation's warm spot, and that's what we have for highs today. As we look into tomorrow, let's make that right for us so we can all see what's going on. As we look into those temperatures for tomorrow, we warm slightly in the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes slide. You see those 30s start to come in, and you see that warm air move further north from Texas and the Gulf states and Florida. You see the Southwest continues its warm trend as well. So let's take a look at what's going to take place for your Tuesday. For your Tuesday, February 1st, as you can see, that warming continues across the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes. You see those 40s start to reach as high as Minneapolis and Detroit. Start to see temperatures hit the 30s and 40s. You see those warm temperatures start to spread east across the deep south, and you see Florida return to the 70s. Those warm temperatures continue in the southwest, as you can see those 70s again in Phoenix and the Tucson area. So let's take a look at what we have for temperatures on your Wednesday. For your Wednesday, we have temperatures in, you see, we return to the cold in the upper Midwest. Those 40s retreat as another Alberta. This is what we have for your let's see, this is for your February 2nd. You see we again another Alberta clipper that's going to pass through on the 2nd. So it's going to, the backside's going to pull that cold air in, cool us right back down to those single digits. Those below zero temperatures, again, northwest Minnesota and in North Dakota. So you see those temperatures go back down again. And you also see some of those warmer temperatures spread east and kind of slide further south in the deep south. And those 70s are now gone in the southwest as that trough begins to take shape in the west, ridge builds in the east, and you can see it in the temperature profile across the nation as the central and western parts of the nation cool down, but your east warms up. So let's take a look at the next day, which is going to be your Thursday. Thursday, we see again that trough deepening in the west and that ridge moving further out east. So that ridge will move east, and you see those 40s, almost 50s there, reach all the way up to Boston, Massachusetts. And then for your last day, we're going to look at what we're going to look at on Friday. That cold air again keeps its stranglehold on the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes. Those warm temperatures slide further east, and those cold temperatures dive further south. As we can see, we now lose the 60s in the south, and we start to see those 40s and 50s and 30s come as far south as Arkansas, Oklahoma, and we also see those 30s coming into Tennessee and Kentucky. That is a look at where we are with the weather forecast for this coming week. Let's adjust the camera again. It's been acting funny today. So now we see that a nice period of weather is in store for us. I'll probably be back tomorrow with another forecast update because these things always change. It constantly changes. What we say today may not be the case tomorrow because we continually run these models, and we'll see what is going to be, what kind of changes. Keep an eye out for any potential big storms that we may need to make you aware of. But as of right now, the only thing of significance is that system that's going to hit the midsection of the country in the east about between the 2nd and the 4th, maybe the 5th. That's about it. It's not good. It's going to bring a little bit of freezing rain, a little snow, a little rain to the deep south, snow in the mid states, and some freezing rain in the middle part of the country. Southern Illinois, Indiana, Ohio could see some freezing rain in northern Kentucky. Missouri, you see some freezing rain, snow north of those regions, rain to the south. But it's not going to be extreme. It may be enough snow for winter storm criteria across the upper Great Lakes, the upper areas around the Great Lakes, maybe in Michigan and the northern half of Ohio, the northern half of Indiana, the northern half of Illinois could see winter storm criteria. That's anything with snow above 6 inches. Seeing snow in that 6 to 8 to maybe 9 inch range wouldn't be out of the question. And for my case, this storm is not going to affect Minnesota in any way. Minnesota and Wisconsin will have minimal impact from this system. So that is a look at the weather forecast for this to start off your week. My name is Dooley Godot. Thank you for joining me. And before we clear, I'm going to give you another moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Alright, thank you very much for subscribing. And make sure you hit the bell so that you're notified whenever I post my next video, okay? Alright, thank you. Have a good day and have a good work week coming up, alright? I'll see you in the next video.